Looking at what he said about Piers Morgan, Prince Harry, the thought of Piers Morgan and his band of journalists earwagging into my mother's private and sensitive messages in the same way as they have me, and then having given her a nightmare time 3 months prior to her death in Paris, nightmare time is a quote, makes me feel physically sick and even more determined to hold those responsible, including Mr. Morgan, accountable for their vile and entirely unjustified behaviour. He goes on, unfortunately, as a consequence of me bringing my Mirror Group claim, both myself and my wife have been subjected to a barrage of horrific personal attacks and intimidation from Piers Morgan, who was the editor of the Daily Mirror between 1995 and 2004, presumably in retaliation and in the hope that I will back down before being able to hold him properly accountable for his unlawful activity towards both me and my mother during his editorship. Piers Morgan, of course, denies all wrongdoing, and the Mirror Group deny most of the charges against them today. I think he said recently that he was not going to take lectures on privacy invasion from the Duke of Sussex. So my information, I don't know whether this is true or not, but just to give you an idea of how it all works, and therefore how likely it is that any of this will be reported with quite the salaciousness that they reported details of Prince Harry's private life. Remember, this is happening in public. I was told once that Piers Morgan was Paul Dacre's choice to replace him as editor of the Daily Mail. I don't know whether that's true or not, but my source on that was impeccable. What I do know is that Rupert Murdoch offered Paul Dacre the editorship of the Times, which forced the hand of the owner of the Daily Mail into moving Sir David English and putting Paul Dacre in charge of the Daily Mail. But Murdoch wanted him at the Times. When he was at the Daily Mail, he had a deputy editor called Tony Gallagher, who has subsequently gone on to edit the Daily Telegraph, The Sun, and now the Times. So that's 4 newspapers, 2 men. Add Piers Morgan to the mix, who edited both the News of the World and the Daily Mirror. That's 7 newspapers and 3 men, all of whom will be chummy and all of whom will have arrangements in place that ensure that not only if I scratch my back, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but also, of course, that we won't air each other's dirty laundry in public. So Gallagher in particular is fascinating because he's managed to be deputy editor of the Daily Mail, editor of the Daily Telegraph, editor of the Sun, and now editor of the Times. So what will the Times, which is in so many other areas the newspaper of repute, the only newspaper of repute left in this country that's not, ostensibly left-wing, i.e. there's only the Guardian really, and then you've got the FT, which occupies a unique space. So the editor of the Times has already edited the Sun, the Telegraph, and deputy edited the Daily Mail, describing Paul Dacre as, in many ways, his hero. So that's what is meant sometimes when people talk about a sort of almost mafioso nature to the print media in this country. What is the likelihood of any of those men telling the truth about each other's operations, let alone their own? I don't know. Maybe the likelihood is huge. But just in terms of why don't these stories get the coverage you might expect them to get, I thought that might have been a little bit helpful for you. Maybe not. Maybe so, but that's what I'm here for. And we'll find a little bit more from these issues. Here's a good one about Paul Burrell. Do you remember them? Witness statement referred to a 2003 article detailing an alleged row between him and his brother William. You remember him, over their mother's former butler, Paul Burrell. You remember him? He said he hadn't wanted our disagreement about how to handle the situation splashed across the newspapers, and he would have used the phrase two-face bleep, as reported, and believes that it was directly lifted from his voicemail. One of the articles put before the trial is a report from The People, headlined, "Will's seeing Burrell is the only way to stop him selling more Diana secrets. Harry, no, Burrell's a bleep." He said the article accurately sets out the position that my brother was open to fixing a meeting with Paul to discuss his ongoing exposés about our mother. However, I had made up my mind about the kind of person I thought Paul was and was firmly against meeting him at this point in my life. That's what he's been dealing with. That was 20 years ago. I've often expressed to you my complete, well, not bafflement, I know where it comes from, but for ordinary members of the public to have treated these two people like dirt for so long, partly because, of course, she is of mixed race, and partly because he has taken a flamethrower really to the pyramid of deference upon which this country relies. If somebody like him can refuse to, quotes, know his place, end quotes, and go along with whatever he's required to go along with, then how stupid must everybody who hates their life but thinks they have to put up with it further down the pyramid feel? You know, this cult of deference that we have in this country. I understand why the newspapers are terrified of him and attack her as if she was some sort of serial killer. And I understand that a lot of that seeps through into the general public. But 10 seconds on Twitter, and you look at this stuff, and you just wonder what the hell has happened. I thought you cared about Diana, Princess of Wales. I thought she was the Princess of Hearts. That little boy walking behind her coffin all those years ago, and then spends his adult life dealing with the fact, the fear, the knowledge, the suspicion that he was being treated like a, well, you can read it for yourself in the witness statement. We firmly believed that she, my mother, should have expected some privacy in death, especially from someone she had trusted, and we were so upset at the way he was behaving. I didn't want to hear his reasons for it, and his allegation, denied by the Mirror, is that a voicemail message would have been lifted from.
Hello and a warm welcome to Sussexful. I'm your host, Emma. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with all our deep dives into the Sussex story. Today's video looks at James O'Brien's powerful take on the lifelong betrayal of Prince Harry, following his discussion on LBC. We also explore reactions to Piers Morgan, the British media, and the treatment Harry, Meghan, and even Princess Diana have faced over the years. Many viewers are calling out unethical journalism, with some expressing frustration that responsible journalists rarely hold others accountable. Others praise James O'Brien for speaking with honesty, fairness, and clarity about the decades-long media harassment aimed at Harry and his family. We also discuss the shocking parallels between the abusive treatment of Princess Diana and the relentless bullying of Meghan Markle. You know, some commenters are raising some pretty tough questions about the role of Kensington Palace and, well, why Prince William didn't fight these media tactics that once targeted his own mother. At the heart of it all is this: is Harry right to take on the media? Will accountability ever come to the press? And honestly, why is the royal family so determined to rewrite Diana's legacy? Join the conversation in the comments. Your voice truly matters here on Sussexful. The royal family's media battleground, Harry's quest for justice. Prince Harry's narrative represents a profound and, deeply personal crusade against media manipulation, echoing the tragic experiences of his mother, Princess Diana. His relentless pursuit of accountability exposes a systemic pattern of unethical journalism that's long plagued the British royal family, where powerful media institutions have weaponized intrusion and character assassination as a way to control and shape the narrative. By challenging these long-standing practices, Harry isn't just seeking redemption for his own family's suffering, he's also confronting the broader, insidious culture of media parasitism that has, time and again, violated the basic human dignity of public figures, turning personal tragedies into, well, sensationalist entertainment. In the treacherous landscape of modern media, the responsibility of ethical journalists to confront and expose unscrupulous reporting has never been more critical. The pervasive culture of sensationalism and character assassination demands a robust system of accountability, where professional integrity acts as a shield against the destructive forces of malicious journalism. When media outlets prioritize clickbait and personal vendetta over truth and compassion, they not only undermine their own credibility, but also cause profound harm to individuals caught in their crosshairs. The systemic failure to check and challenge unethical reporting perpetuates a toxic cycle of misinformation and personal destruction, leaving vulnerable subjects like public figures exposed to relentless and often unfounded scrutiny. It is imperative that principled journalists stand united in calling out and dismantling practices that tarnish the noble profession of journalism, ensuring that the media serves its fundamental purpose of informing and protecting the public, rather than exploiting and sensationalizing personal narratives for commercial gain. The systematic abuse Princess Diana endured transcended mere media scrutiny, representing a calculated effort by the royal family to marginalize and psychologically demolish her very identity. Her vulnerability was not just a personal tragedy, but a deliberate institutional strategy designed to suppress her narrative and maintain the monarchy's carefully curated public image. The depths of this psychological warfare were profound. From orchestrating calculated press narratives to actively undermining her credibility, the royal family consistently sought to diminish her significance and erase her emotional impact. By strategically leaking disparaging information and positioning her as an unstable outsider, they attempted to render her invisible, despite her immense popularity and genuine connection with the global public. This relentless campaign of erasure was not merely about controlling a wayward royal member, but about systematically dismantling a woman who threatened the rigid, archaic structures of royal protocol and institutional reputation. Prince Harry's journey through familial and media-driven abuse represents a profound generational struggle against systemic media persecution. Having witnessed the relentless harassment that consumed his mother, Princess Diana's life, Harry has become a vocal advocate for challenging the toxic tabloid culture that he believes contributed to her immense suffering. The deeply personal battle extends beyond individual grievance, revealing a systemic pattern of media manipulation and emotional violence that has plagued the royal family for decades. Despite facing potential familial alienation, Harry has courageously pursued justice, using his platform to expose the intrusive and often destructive tactics employed by unscrupulous journalists who seem more interested in sensationalism than truth, a mission that carries the emotional weight of his mother's unresolved legacy and the protection of his own wife and children from similar predatory media practices. In a shocking turn of events, Prince William's office has descended into a calculated strategy of manipulation, eerily reminiscent of the very tactics that once tormented his own mother, Princess Diana. By strategically throwing Prince Harry and Meghan under the bus, William appears more concerned with covering his personal indiscretions than maintaining familial unity. The painful irony is palpable. The son who was once expected to champion his mother's legacy of truth and compassion has instead adopted the very institutional playbook that Diana fought so desperately against, releasing statements that paint Harry and Meghan as problematic, while at the same time attempting to erase his mother's powerful narrative of resilience. In an era where journalistic integrity often seems like a quaint relic, James O'Brien emerges as a beacon of principled reporting, consistently demonstrating an unwavering commitment to fairness and truth. His remarkable ability to cut through sensationalism and speak with, remarkable clarity and compassion really sets him apart from many of his contemporaries, especially when addressing complex media controversies. O'Brien has repeatedly shown that ethical journalism isn't about generating clickbait or stoking controversy, but about presenting balanced perspectives and holding powerful institutions accountable. His vocal stance against media parasites who prey on public figures like Prince Harry represents more than just commentary. It's a principled stand for journalistic integrity, challenging the systemic bullying and manipulation that have become, honestly, disturbingly normalized in modern media landscapes. In these challenging times, our collective hopes rest with Prince Harry as he courageously confronts the toxic media landscape that has long tormented his family. The need to support victims of media harassment has never been more critical, especially for those who have endured relentless and unethical scrutiny. Harry's pursuit of justice represents more than a personal battle. It's a broader stand against the parasitic journalism that has caused, well, immeasurable harm to public figures, particularly those who have experienced the most profound personal tragedies. We must rally behind individuals like Harry who are willing to challenge the systemic abuses within media culture, hoping that his efforts will not only bring personal healing, but also spark meaningful change in how public figures are treated by an often ruthless press. Prince Harry's life has been a profound narrative of ongoing betrayal, a deeply personal struggle that transcends mere familial conflict and cuts to the core of institutional manipulation and media exploitation. From childhood through his adult years, he has experienced a systematic undermining of his emotional well-being, first through the royal family's complex dynamics and, subsequently through the relentless media machinery that sought to deconstruct his every move. The importance of addressing this betrayal cannot be overstated, as it represents not just an individual's painful journey, but a broader systemic issue of how public figures, especially those from royal backgrounds, are stripped of their humanity and autonomy. Harry's courageous stand against these destructive forces is more than a personal vendetta. It is a critical exposure of the toxic mechanisms that have long operated behind palace walls and tabloid headlines, challenging a culture of silence and complicity that has harmed generations of individuals caught in the crosshairs of institutional power and media sensationalism. The urgent need for meaningful service from the royal family has never been more apparent than now, with public sentiment shifting towards demanding genuine accountability and transparency. Where traditional royal protocols have long shielded the institution from critical examination, voices like Prince Harry's are challenging the status quo, compelling a necessary reckoning with systemic issues that have plagued the monarchy for generations. Moreover, the media's relentless and often predatory treatment of royal figures demands a fundamental transformation, moving away from sensationalism towards responsible, ethical reporting that respects individual dignity and recognizes the human experiences behind the royal facade. This call for change isn't merely about individual narratives, but represents a broader societal push for institutional reform, challenging long-entrenched power dynamics that have historically silenced and marginalized those within the royal system who dare to speak truth.